Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the UPAA rules. So originally when this rule book came out, I didn't really look at it because I was under the impression it was just for pros because that's largely what UPAA has been, but it's definitely creeping more and more into the amateur side of things. Like I feel like the writing is 100% on the wall that like PPA tournaments will one day be like paddle-wise, UPAA only. They'll have their own rule book. Like it'll be a very distinctly separate thing from anything USAP.
Yeah.
Like we're headed that direction. Whether that's good or bad, probably a lot of ways you could debate that. I feel like they have done a better job in some regards, and then we'll see if that becomes a problem later in the future. But we're going to talk about the rules for PPA tournaments. So if you play PPA tournaments and you're an amateur, you're going to want to listen up because these rules do apply to you.
Yes.
And some of these are pretty different. So one of the first rules that was mentioned is that this is obviously only going to be really relevant with a ref around, but I just thought this one was more interesting. So only 1 foot has to reestablish after a non-volley zone touch if obviously only 1 foot touched the line. If both feet touch the line, both have to reestablish. But in the past, if you pushed off with 1 foot, both feet had to reestablish. Now, if you landed on the same foot you pushed off with and you are considered established, that other foot doesn't need to touch the ground to not be a foot fault anymore. Yep. In the past, both feet would have had to be completely flat. So I thought that was just an interesting rule change. This one, probably a bigger change. Players will now change sides at 6 every game. So that's not only game 3 anymore. And that was for like sun and wind. So instead of having it be, now you're choosing like, okay, if we go to game 3, do I want to be on the good side? You're just switching every game.
Yeah, I don't like this rule.
I'm fine with that. Like, what would be bad about that? To me, that just evens it out. Like, think about tournaments where wind is a huge factor.
But who's calling out for it to be evened out? I think that this is a strategy. Like, this you lose strategy of the game. A big part of the game was thinking like, okay, we need to decide, are we going to serve, receive, or choose side? And a lot of times, depending on venue, choosing side was a big element, and that mattered, right? And I think that was is a like fun part of the game, and I feel like that's kind of lost now. So
no, I'm good.
I'm actually not a fan of this.
No, that to me is like, it's like taking RNG out. For those of you who don't know, that's a gaming treatment. Yeah, it's like wind is RNG, bro. Like it's like,
yeah, but again, that's part of the strategy.
No, I think it's fine. I'm for making that, but I do think I want to know how many. So these rules go into effect May 22nd, so not long after this podcast. I just want to know how long it's going to take for amateurs to get used to that.
That's like saying in tennis, every game we get to 30 love and or whoever gets to 31st, you switch sides. Like that would be so ridiculous.
But then we could say that about switching 6 in game 3.
No, because you still switch sides after sets and games. So like just switching in the middle of every game, too much. Excessive.
Nah,
I'm not a fan.
Oh, actually,
it makes sense in game 3.
Did I write this down? I wrote this down way later, but this actually ties into this. So for games to 11 or 15, you only get 1 timeout now instead of 2, and that's because at 6, that's technically a timeout.
Yep.
So
which
people should get used to that.
Speaking of, like, so many people, and I watch this happen from like so many PPAs I go to, so many people do not use the side switch as a timeout. They just walk to the other side and immediately go to the baseline. I'm like, you are losing such a valuable resource by doing that. Like if you really want to, like if you're just in a groove and you want to keep going, sure. But I feel like a lot of people just don't even know that a side switch is a timeout. You can go get some water, go to a towel, take a breather, but people just don't.
I will purposely delay some of my timeouts because I know the side switch is coming up. I'm like, why wait? Why use it right before potentially this side switch and then have 2 back-to-back timeouts?
If it's game 3 and you're down 5-0, which you probably should have taken a timeout before that point, but like why take a timeout at 5-0 right as you're about to switch sides and get a timeout?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But that's something to definitely be aware of because, tournaments have historically been 2 timeouts and then obviously, you only get the side switch in game 3, but now because of that side switch, it's a free timeout. Well,
so differing opinions on that one.
Definitely. Next one, this is probably only relevant with a referee, but play may be stopped without penalty to correct player position. See, the way they wrote this actually is kind of interesting. I'll just read it out. Play may be stopped without penalty to correct player position, server/receiver, or score before the return of serve/dead ball. So if called before the serve, you just redo it. So, I mean, nothing even happened. You just fix whatever, fix the score, and then just serve the ball. So that's if before it's struck. If called after the serve, it's a fault. And then, but you know what? I'm just not realizing, reading that rule book, surely that is a fault on the person who called it out. So like if I'm the receiving player and I heard you call the score wrong and you serve the ball and I correct you, that must be a fault for me. There's no way that's a fault for the other team, because if it has to be that way, because if it was a ref and they didn't catch it, then I'm assuming you're just going to play on. And if a ref did catch it, they'll just correct it. It almost certainly has to be a fault for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would be that way.
Yeah.
But I could also envision a world where it's not.
And then the last one is if the ball is already dead. So if you played the point out, ball's dead, point's over, then the rally just stands as it was.
That makes
and then
sense.
You move on. So I guess that one is not necessarily that different from before. That is similar, but I just know that that rule has changed a number of times through USAP and whatever. And people have gotten confused about like, oh no, if I called it, then we just redo it. And then there's all this, I see like this bickering of like, no, that's not what the rule is. So just be aware. Probably just don't, just correct after the thing. I would not correct during a point.
Middle of the point. It's always smart to just play out a point.
Another one.
Now this is a big one. I feel like you and I will probably disagree on this.
Okay, we'll see. Serves that are close and do not clearly comply with all service requirements in the ref's judgment are illegal and a fault, no warnings.
Okay. I get what they're doing, but the problem is it's still going to be so subjective down to the ref, right? So like we're going to have refs that are like insanely strict, and we're going to have refs that are the three blind mice and just don't see anything and don't care.
It'll be interesting because I feel like I could see where that could happen.
I don't think this changes really anything.
Well, I think what it does
other
change
than
is
the
that
players who are pretty like Tyson or like pretty high up, you know, the like pretty egregious, like, or Alshon, like the egregious, like they're pushing the line. There will definitely be refs who are like, no, that's a fault, which I think is good. But again, it still comes down to so much subjectivity.
But I feel like for me, it's like, yes, there is still that. But what's nice about this is before, the way the rule was written, it felt very much like unless the ref was like 100% certain, like they were never going to call it. Now it feels like they can go, I feel like you were breaking that rule. Now I have a little bit more liberty to say something.
I wonder if there's going to be video reviews on this.
I mean,
I'm sure it probably would. I'm almost certain
can't
that
imagine.
no player ever would.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Right? But let's just say you have a ref that is like being overly strict, and you know for a fact that you hit a clean serve. That would suck if a ref just stepped in, you know, and felt like you were breaking the rules.
I feel like, to me, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. To me, I feel like it's going to be less of a, oh, if you're doing it right, but you just have I feel like it'll be less of a strict ref being like, hey, you were close, and more of like, well, now we can just punish the people who are like so obviously pushing it. Whereas before you're like, okay, well, I don't know exactly where your hip is. Now it's like, okay, that looked very obviously bad. You can't do that. Versus like, I don't feel like you or me would get called for it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I've always been very safe on my serve. I've never once been called for a service fault.
I don't think, well, I got called for a service fault because I served the ball before the ref called it, but not for being too high.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like almost everyone who their first time having a ref does that.
Yeah.
Serves before the ref calls the ball.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I felt so stupid when I did that at the US Open. First time I've ever done that this year. And I was like, how did I mess that up?
I played somebody in a final who did it like 3 times.
I have played against people who kept screwing it up. And I was like, well, this is fine for me.
Yep. But now, you know, no more Tysons, no more Eric Onsens, Alshon.
Yeah.
Even Roscoe, he pushes it.
Yep.
He pushes it pretty far sometimes.
And now at least for amateurs, you know, hopefully. And I don't feel like most amateurs are bad about it. Like, honestly, the amount of amateurs I've probably played and felt like
I don't know.
That their serve was high and also an advantage.
It's usually not both.
Yes.
It's usually like
one.
it's pretty high, but it's clearly not being taken advantage of. So it's like it's dumb, but it doesn't really matter. So I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
this one, I mean, more appropriately named the Eric Onson's rule. A player may not attempt to influence the ball's flight after it has been legally played with a paddle on the player's side of the net. So, no blowing on the ball, no fanning it with a paddle. That's actually an interesting one I just thought of. Instead of blowing it, I wonder if you could get like more air generated by like hitting it up and then like...
There's no way.
You don't think someone couldn't generate more wind speed with swinging their paddle hard than with their mouth?
I think you get more consistent air pressure by using your lungs.
I'd be probably more concerned with, could someone do it fast enough? Like, you're not swing it fast enough, but like get in position to swing the paddle quick enough.
You might move a larger volume of air with a paddle, but it's not pinpointed enough to actually get a ball to like move that distance it needs to, versus like blowing with your lungs. It consolidates that amount of air pressure down to a finer point where you can actually move an object.
Well, either way, you can't do that anymore. I don't really think that happened often. It was like...
It's right. That's the thing. It's not that it happened often. And it was an extremely entertaining thing in pickleball that people like know is a thing.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like an entertainment factor of the game is lost. And I actually find that kind of sad.
I guess I don't really care either way. I thought it was entertaining. I liked seeing it, but it also happened so rarely that it's not like it was happening even every tournament. I would say it wasn't even happening every like 4 tournaments until Eric, just recently did it like back to back. But prior to that, what was the last pro we could name that even did it?
Yeah, it's not happened often. I feel like I could be way wrong. I feel like maybe Riley Newman did it a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, he had definitely tried it like a couple times. Whether it was successful or not, I can't remember.
But this is like saying tweeners or hitting the ball behind your back is now distracting, and you can't do that anymore. Like, we're outlawing tweeners.
The only thing that I see the point they're trying to make is like, okay, you already hit the ball. Now, why do you need to do anything after striking the ball to influence what it's doing?
Okay. What if you do it in the reverse?
Okay.
What if you say, I'm playing you. You hit the ball to me. No, the other way around. I hit the ball to you, hits the net cord, tips over. Okay. You barely tap it over. And as it's still in the air and just barely crossing, I step in the kitchen and blow. I haven't influenced the ball with my paddle yet. And I push it back to your side so it never comes over.
So I feel like that's what they're trying to avoid, though, is exactly that.
But this says you can't do it after you influence the ball. I never influenced the ball. I haven't touched it yet. You did.
Player may not attempt to influence the ball's flight after it has been legally played with a paddle on the player's side of the net. Yeah, there's no way they would allow that.
Because now right, but it's not in the rules, and unless they add that verbiage into the rules, I say it's good. Somebody, please, if any pros are listening right now, which I know some of you are, somebody needs to attempt this.
I feel like that'd be an interesting one, because so you didn't touch it with a paddle, but you also did influence the ball and you were in the kitchen. So did you?
But here's the thing. The non-volley zone is you can't touch the ball. You can't volley.
I'm just trying to think how they would handle that in real time.
I would say, here's the thing. If this happens, theoretically, if this happens in an event, they can't call a fault on it, but then afterwards, they definitely add it into the rules.
I'm almost surprised. Well, maybe I'm not. Okay, I was gonna say I'm almost surprised this one hasn't been seen more, but I guess if you think about it, if a ball hits a net cord, usually you're not like highly anticipating that that's gonna happen, and then even less does that ball usually sit on the net cord for more than a second. So it's probably like one of those things like you're gonna have to go from the non-volley zone to in front of the ball in like under a second, recognize all this is happening, and then blow on it. So I guess the odds of it are probably pretty slim, unless you were already in the kitchen. Like, I guess if you were, when some people kind of like patty cake the ball over back and forth, I guess I could see it happening in that situation. Well, if that ever happens, we'll see how they handle that one.
I cannot wait. I hope this happens in a game someday. Eric Onsons, if you're listening, you need to take this back.
That's crazy. Okay, next one. If the ball is not played or played and becomes dead on the team's own side, the team may promptly make an out call or briefly consult with their partner/coach to determine in or out. Now, the reason I put this in here is because in the past, you were not allowed to talk to the sideline about line calls.
Yeah.
Now you can ask.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about that.
It's interesting. I feel like people kind of did it anyways. But
people for sure did.
But I mean, they would at least ask, but not necessarily be like, okay, well, that means it was in.
Everyone
but it
was
definitely
just
turned
really-
into an argument.
They're just really subtle about it. You know, they would just kind of like use their eyes and
Sometimes not
kinda
even
look.
subtle.
That true.
But then the follow-up rule right after that said opponent. I must have said if. I must have missed a word here. But if opponent consulted on a line call, the response is final. So I feel like that's got to be more with a ref because, like, I'm imagining if you just consulted the sideline, like, okay, well, there's usually two opposing teams. There's usually two people watching. So what if both sides, one went in, one went out? It's like, okay, well, what did you do? But interesting that you can do that now. And then the follow-up relevant to that as well is coaching is now permitted between rallies and timeouts. So you know how, like, if any of your friends from the sideline said something that used to be illegal, now you can technically do that whenever as long as it's not during the point. So if someone was like, hey, do this, like a lot of times people would get called out for that.
I don't
by
think
the ref.
anyone has ever tried coaching in the middle of a point from the sideline.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
That's
but,
crazy.
I mean, that would be nuts.
I had a partner of mine get yelled at because they were talking to somebody on the sideline for coaching in the middle of a game. And the ref got really angry.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. So you can technically do that now. That
Okay.
I think is just a very different rule change from what we've historically seen. So I thought it was relevant to put in here.
I also am curious how that's going to be governed because, okay, between points, what if someone like uses, it's kind of like how they, Fed does this a lot where it's pretty egregious about going over to the towel, taking a lot of time, kicking the ball to the side, just wasting time, trying to use it as like a mini timeout. Wonder if people are going to like try and talk to their coaches and extend that as much as they can, then go to the towel, and just try and gain as much timeout time as possible.
When I've been like looking at all these, I've not really cared about any of it for the most, besides like the blowing on the ball rule. Like I've basically just been focusing on the amateurs. Because, I feel like we see that all the time where someone's like, oh, hey, you should do this. And the ref's like, hey, you can't do that. And so for amateurs, I don't think anything's going to change. I think it'll just be the exact same as it was. Pros, it will be interesting, I guess.
I guess we're thinking about it in two different scenarios.
Like, I'm just thinking for the amateurs because the pros, whatever, they'll have the refs, like, tell them all these rules. The amateurs, like, I feel like people are going to go to the next one or two PPAs. And so there's going to be arguments about, like, no, I heard that this is a rule now. And someone's like, no, this has never been a rule. It's like, okay.
Someone who just didn't know the rules got updated.
Read the rule book. I will leave it linked down below so that you guys can go read it. That's all the rules I had. There are more, but those are the ones that I thought were probably the most relevant for an amateur to know. But if you really want to be up to date, go read the rule book. It'd be good for people to know, especially just because I feel like this is going to, at some point, it's the rules between like USAP and UPA are going to conflict a little bit about like for tournaments, like what rule are we playing by here?
Yeah.
Unless it's clearly stated or whatever. So anyways, that's the UPA rules. Let's talk about that new Forward Ranger bag.